Phil Mickelson used to feel impossible to miss. He was everywhere, in the biggest tournaments, in the loudest debates, in the wildest moments golf could produce. He was the gambler, the escape artist, the showman, the guy who could make a crowd gasp with one swing and make the entire golf world talk with one sentence. But now, it feels like he's fading into silence. Missed events, fewer sightings, less noise, less chaos. And for a player who built his entire career on presence, that silence feels louder than anything he ever said. What happened to one of the most magnetic figures the game has ever seen? Is this just a pause? Is it the natural end of a legendary career? Or is there something deeper going on with Phil Mickelson's place in golf? Because the truth is, this story is not just about biggest personalities suddenly stops feeling like the center of the game. And before we go any further, if you truly love golf, if this game means something to you, and if you enjoy stories that remind us why these players matter far beyond the scorecard, then subscribe and become part of this golf family. Because golf is more than results. It's memory, emotion, history, heartbreak, and moments we never forget. Phil Mickelson disappearing from golf doesn't mean he literally vanished. It means something stranger than that. It means one of the most visible, most talked about, most unmistakable players in modern golf suddenly feels distant. For years, Phil didn't just play in tournaments. He shaped the mood around them. Even when he wasn't winning, he was still Phil. Still interesting. Still dangerous. Still one impossible up and down away from making you believe all over again. And that's why this recent stretch has felt so different. Because what we publicly know is actually very limited. Mickelson said he and Amy needed to be present in the United States for a family health matter. That is the public explanation. And honestly, that part deserves respect. When real life steps in, golf becomes secondary. But for fans, the silence around everything else created a completely different feeling. Not gossip, not just speculation, more like absence. The kind of absence where you look around a tournament week and suddenly realize a familiar energy is gone. But here's the part nobody talks about. Phil's absence feels bigger because his entire career was built on never blending into the background. This is a man who won as an amateur on the PGA Tour. A man who turned left-handed flair into a brand the entire sports world recognized. A man who won 45 PGA Tour events and 6 majors. A man who spent years breaking hearts at the US Open, then winning the kinds of tournaments that made fans fall in love with risk-taking golf. With Phil, it was never supposed to be quiet. His whole aggression, imagination. If Tiger brought intimidation, Phil brought possibility. And for a lot of golf fans, that mattered. Because Phil represented something people miss in modern sports. Imperfection with courage. He didn't always look in control. He looked like he was trying something. He looked like a guy willing to fail spectacularly if it meant he still had a chance to pull off something unforgettable. That made him thrilling. That made him relatable. And that made him one of the rare stars whose mistakes, somehow, made people care even more. Then came one of the most unbelievable twists golf has ever seen. At age 50, when most people thought the great chapters were already written, Phil Mickelson won the 2021 PGA Championship and became the oldest major champion in history. Think about that for a second. In a sport obsessed with youth, speed, power, and the next big thing, Phil reached back into the past and grabbed one more miracle. Kiowa wasn't just a win. It felt like a message that you can age, be doubted, in the world. And this is where everything changed. Because instead of riding off on that triumph as one of golf's most beloved veterans, Phil became one of its most polarizing figures. His move to LIV Golf changed everything. For some fans, a cautionary tale. But no matter where you stood, one thing was undeniable. Once again, Phil Mickelson was impossible to ignore. That's why this current phase feels so unusual. The controversy was loud. The comeback was loud. The debates were loud. Phil was always either charging, defending, swinging, talking, winning, risking, or provoking. But now the loudest thing around him is uncertainty. Wait till you hear what makes this feel even heavier. It's not just that he missed time. It's where he is in his life and career. At 55, Mickelson is no longer just fighting fields. He's fighting time, expectation, perception, and the weight of his own legacy. And that sounds beautiful until you realize it also means fans witness every stage of the decline. Every near miss. Every fade. Every reminder that the old magic doesn't arrive on command anymore. And Phil himself has hinted at that reality. He has spoken about struggling in parts of his game that used to define him, especially the short game. That's what makes this emotional. We're not just watching a player miss starts. We're watching a legend wrestle with the part of sports nobody can avoid forever. The slow separation between who you were and what you can still do. Still, Phil being Phil, even the late career version, gave people reasons to believe. Remember the 2023 Masters? He surged into a tie for second, and suddenly it felt possible again. Not sensible, not likely, possible. And that's all Phil ever really needed. A sliver, an opening, a chance to make golf feel irrational in the best way. But here's where the story gets even more real. In 2026, the public timeline started painting a picture fans couldn't ignore. He missed the first two LIV events because of that family health matter. Then more absences followed. He played only once in LIV early in the season and finished well down the board. He missed the Masters. He later withdrew from the PGA Championship too. And when a player with that resume says, in effect, "I wish I could play, but I can't," the conversation changes. It stops feeling like strategy. It stops feeling like scheduling. It starts feeling personal, uncertain, human. And when that happens, the golf fan in you shifts. You stop asking, can he still contend? You start asking, is he okay? That's an important difference. Because for years, Phil Mickelson has been treated like a symbol of audacity, a symbol of modern golf's power struggles, a symbol of risk, reinvention, and controversy. But stories like this remind us that even the biggest names in the game are still people first. There are moments when the leaderboard no longer matters. Moments when the argument online no longer matters. Moments when the only honest thing fans can do is step back and remember that golf careers are public, but real life is not. But here's the twist inside the twist. Phil's disappearance is not only about missing events. It's also about how fast golf moves on. That may be the hardest part of all. This sport keeps going. New stars arrive. New winners take over. New rivalries fill the air. The cameras find the next story. And even legends, true legends, can drift from the center faster than anyone expects. One you are a memory people argue about. That's what makes Phil such a fascinating figure right now. He hasn't been erased. Not even close. His legacy is secure. 3 Masters, 6 majors, 45 PGA Tour wins. The oldest major champion ever. That part is untouchable. But his place in the present feels unsettled. Is he still an active threat? A symbolic captain? A fading competitor? A future ambassador? A man trying to return? Or a legend slowly stepping into the final shadows of a career that once burned at full volume? And this is where the emotional truth hits hardest. A lot of golf fans grew up with Phil Mickelson. They didn't just watch him. They lived eras through him. The duels. The near misses at the US Open. The miracle flop shots. The thumbs-up grin. The charges on Sunday. The mistakes that made you groan and the recoveries that made you laugh because somehow he did it again. Phil wasn't always tidy. He wasn't always universally loved. But he was alive in a way sports fans never forget. That's why his silence feels so strange. Because golf fans can handle decline. They can handle losses. They can handle controversy. For memory to get louder. Silence makes you replay old moments and wonder whether you already saw the last great Phil Mickelson moment without realizing it. And yet, if there's one lesson Phil has taught the golf world, it's this. Never assume the ending arrives when you think it does. This is the same man who shocked golf at Kiowa when logic said he shouldn't. The same man who has spent decades turning doubt into fuel. So no, nobody honest should pretend to know exactly what comes next. Maybe he returns later this year. Maybe he shows up with one more unforgettable week in him. Maybe this becomes the quiet beginning of the end. Right now, the truth is simpler than the rumors. Publicly, we know he has stepped away repeatedly because of a family health matter. And beyond that, the future looks uncertain. And maybe that's enough. Because sometimes the biggest sports stories are not about scandal or comeback hype. Sometimes they're about perspective. About realizing that even icons eventually become fragile in the public eye. About understanding that greatness doesn't protect anyone from time, pressure, family pain, or change. About accepting that legends don't always exit in one clean, cinematic final scene. Sometimes they fade in and out. Sometimes they leave us waiting. Sometimes they make us reflect before they make us cheer again. And that is why stories like this matter. Not because Phil Mickelson is perfect. Not because every fan agrees with his choices. Not because we know everything. But because golf is richer for the players who made us feel something real. And whether you loved him, questioned him, rooted for him, or argued. So now I want to ask you something. Do you think Phil Mickelson still has one more meaningful chapter left in golf? Or are we witnessing the quiet closing stretch of one of the sport's most unforgettable careers? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear where you stand. And if you love golf stories that go deeper than scores and headlines, stay with this channel. Because this game is full of legends, mysteries, comebacks, and moments that deserve to be remembered.